My stepdad claimed I was unstable and lying. But when the court saw the footage of him breaking in, everything unraveled, and my mother finally admitted she'd known all along. You know that eerie feeling when the air in the room changes? Like you walked into a place that remembers something it shouldn't? That's how it felt the day Ron moved in next door. I was 10 years old, still small enough to think the world would fix itself if I just told the truth loud enough. But nothing about what followed was that simple. Ron kept to himself, barely looked up when the school bus pulled onto Sycamore Lane. He wore flannel shirts and old sneakers, and always walked his dog right after sunset. But the day he moved in, my stepdad, Gary, grabbed me by the shoulder and said, "That man over there? Trouble. I'll have to take extra steps to keep you safe now, sweetheart." That same night, Gary mounted a security camera on the side of our house in Bloomington, Indiana. He told my mom it was for our safety. To keep an eye on the new guy, he said with an exaggerated wink. But when I looked outside the next morning, I realized something terrifying. The camera wasn't pointing at Ron's house. It was pointed directly at my bedroom window. At first, I told myself it must have been an accident. But then came the nightly safety checks. Gary would knock softly, slip inside after Mom fell asleep, and sit on the edge of my bed. He'd lean in too close and whisper about what creeps like Ron might do to little girls like me. He went into disturbing detail, too much detail. The first time I tried to tell my mom, she was folding towels in the living room. I told her Gary kept coming into my room at night. She didn't even look up. "Gary just loves you like his own daughter," she said. I pushed harder, told her about the camera's direction. That made her pause, but only long enough to roll her eyes and say, "He manages security for the hardware store, honey. He knows what he's doing." But Ron never even looked at me. He'd go back inside whenever we walked by his house. He avoided kids, avoided eye contact. The only strange thing about him was that he always seemed to show up when Gary took me out alone. To the park. For ice cream. Every time, like clockwork, Ron would suddenly need to take his dog for a walk or check his mailbox. Gary got bolder after that. Tickling games that lasted too long. Baths I didn't want. He bought me a bright yellow two-piece swimsuit I hated and said it was for our kiddie pool days. Then came the day everything changed. It was late July. Mom was working a double shift at the clinic, and Gary had been drinking since lunchtime. He cornered me in the garage under the pretense of helping him clean. "You're turning into such a pretty little thing," he slurred, pressing his hands on my shoulders and nudging me backward toward the wall. That's when we both heard it, the creak of the side door. "Sorry to bother you," Ron said, stepping halfway into the garage, leash in hand. "My cat slipped out earlier. Calico, mind if I check in here real quick?" Gary's face morphed. His hands dropped like I was scalding hot. "There's no cat in here," he said through clenched teeth. "You should go." But Ron didn't. He stepped all the way in and looked around casually. "Pretty sure I saw her run under those boxes." I didn't wait. I ducked out from between them and sprinted back into the house, lungs tight and throat burning. That night, Gary and Mom sat me down and told me Ron was a manipulator, that he'd brainwashed me, that he was trying to tear the family apart. But all I could think was, Ron had walked into that garage, and Gary had stopped. The next afternoon, I saw Ron walking his dog along the sidewalk. Something inside me cracked open. I ran up to him, and the words fell out like rocks in my throat. "Gary. Gary touches me. At night." Ron didn't react the way I expected. He just nodded once, like he'd already suspected it. "I know," he said softly. "I've been keeping track of everything. I thought that would be the end of it. That now someone knew, it would all stop. But I was wrong. Because going to the police? That was just the beginning of something even worse." Ron's truck rattled gently as we drove down Main Street, the old engine humming beneath our silence. I sat curled in the passenger seat, the seatbelt pressing into the bruise on my shoulder. I tried to be brave like kids are in books, the ones who tell the truth, and everything gets better. But Bloomington wasn't a storybook town, and I was about to learn that the hard way. When we got to the station, the officer at the front desk didn't even look up from his paperwork until Ron spoke. "We'd like to report suspected child abuse," Ron said, calm and steady. "This girl's stepfather." The officer cut him off, finally looking at me with a raised brow. "And you are?" "I'm her neighbor," Ron said. "She came to me for help." The man blinked once, then leaned back in his chair. "So you're not a relative, and you brought her in alone?" Ron nodded, unfazed. "She didn't feel safe at home." The officer's mouth tightened. Sir, I hope you understand how this looks. That was the moment everything shifted. Before I could say anything, a female officer came around the desk and crouched in front of me. She smiled the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Hey there, sweetheart. Why don't you come with me so we can talk? I glanced at Ron, who gave me a reassuring nod. I followed her down a hallway into a small gray room with no windows. But instead of asking about Gary, she asked about Ron. Did he ever touch you? She asked gently. No. Did he offer you gifts? Ask you to keep secrets? No. I said again louder. He helped me. She kept asking. Not about Gary. Not about the nights. Not about the camera. Just Ron. And when I started to cry, she offered me tissues and said, sometimes our brains get confused when adults tell us things. Are you sure you're remembering everything right? They released us nearly 2 hours later, but only after warning Ron that misleading a minor was a serious offense. One officer even told him, this better not be some custody stunt. Ron didn't say anything until we pulled into his driveway. He left the engine running, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. They called your mom, he said finally. They said there's no grounds for investigation. The sick feeling in my stomach deepened. Back home, I stepped through the door and into something colder than winter. My mother was waiting, standing rigid in the hallway. Gary leaned against the doorframe with his usual beer in hand, wearing a mask of calm he didn't deserve. You've humiliated this family, Mom hissed, grabbing my wrist. Do you have any idea what you've done to Gary's reputation? The neighbors will talk, his boss will hear. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't even ask why I ran. That night, Gary came into my room. I won't describe what happened, but when he left, I lay still under the covers for what felt like forever, too numb to cry, too scared to move. My heart was a trapped animal beating against my ribs. Then, finally, I did move. I crawled out of bed, pulled on a hoodie, and opened the window. My hands trembled so badly it took 3 tries to lift the latch. I climbed out barefoot onto the porch roof and dropped down into the damp grass below. I didn't look back. Ron answered the door in pajama pants and an old band t-shirt, his eyes widening as he took in my tear-streaked face, the limp in my step. But what stopped me cold were the 2 little girls behind him. They sat on the couch, knees tucked to their chests. Their arms and legs were bruised, deep purple, yellowing at the edges. The kind of bruises that come from rage, not accidents. My heart plummeted. Had I just run from one monster to another? The older girl, maybe 7, was the first to speak. Dad, she's bleeding. The younger one climbed off the couch, approaching me carefully. She looks like us, when we lived with Mommy. Girls, Ron said, calm but firm. Go to your room. Now. They hesitated, eyes darting between us. But Dad, she needs help. Like we did. Anna, he said softly, please. The older one took her sister's hand. Before they left, the little one turned to me, touched my hand lightly, and said, it's okay. Our dad saves people. And then they were gone. Ron led me to the couch and wrapped me in a blanket, his movements careful and respectful. He sat across the room, giving me space. I need to call an ambulance, he said gently. No, I whispered. They'll send me back. They'll think you're lying again. He stared at me, torn, then slowly set the phone down. I believe you, he said, but we need to build something they can't ignore. And that's when I noticed the thick folder on his table. He saw me looking and handed it over. Inside were photographs, medical reports, printed emails, evidence. Those girls, he said quietly. Their mother did that to them. I've been trying to get custody for 2 years. But she convinced the court I was unstable, paid her friend to lie on the record. And I have a past. A past? I asked. Nothing involving children. Just enough to make me look dangerous. Enough for the judge to believe her. The weight of it hit me then. What happens when the wrong people are believed and the right ones aren't? We'll document everything, he said. What Gary did to you. Photos, dates, details. We'll build a case. But before I could speak, we heard the unmistakable crunch of tires in gravel. I peeked out the window. My mom's car had pulled into our driveway. Gary's truck parked behind her. They were early. They know I'm gone, I whispered. Ron stood slowly. They can't force you back tonight. Not legally. You're reporting abuse. But they'll try. Then came the pounding on the door. Ron, open up. I know she's in there. Gary's voice bellowed through the house, like thunder. Ron looked at me. Do you want me to open the door? I nodded, barely able to breathe. He walked to the door, but didn't open it. She's safe, Gary. Go home. You kidnapped her. Gary roared. Open this damn door, or I'm calling the cops. Please do, Ron replied, his voice even. I'll show them the bruises. There was silence. Then came my mother's voice, shaking and high-pitched. Please, Ron. She's confused. She makes up stories. Just let me take my daughter home. She's not making anything up, Ron said. And this time, I'll make sure someone listens. The silence after my mother's voice faded down Ron's porch steps felt heavier than it should have. He stood by the door until her car and Gary's truck finally disappeared from view. They're gone, he said. I didn't move. Let's start documenting, he added gently, walking to the kitchen. Everything. He returned with a small notebook, a pen, and a warm towel. You write. I'll help collect evidence. Just the visible injuries, okay? That phrase, just the visible injuries, hit me hard. Because there were so many. On my upper arms. Across my ribs. A purpling bruise blooming on my hip. Ron worked quickly, respectfully. Every photo he took was preceded by a question. Is this okay? Just here. I can stop if it's too much. He left to upload the pictures, and I sat there, gripping the pen. But I couldn't write about Gary yet. My mind reached backward, to a moment buried deep in childhood. I was 6, the house still felt new, and Gary had only been living with us a few weeks. That night, I'd had a nightmare, wolves in the hallway, and wandered into the living room, still sniffling. Gary was on the couch, watching a late-night sitcom, wearing boxers and a t-shirt. Can't sleep, bug, he asked. I told him about the wolves. That I was scared. He patted his lap. Come here. I'll protect you. I crawled up without hesitation. I didn't understand why his arm rested lower than necessary, or why he smelled like beer and sweat, and something too sharp for comfort. I just remember him whispering, "Don't worry. Nothing's gonna hurt you, unless you scream." That was the first time my voice got stuck in my throat. I didn't write that in the notebook. Not yet. Ron came back, holding a flash drive. I've saved the images locally and on the cloud. I'm not letting them silence this. I looked at him. How are you not terrified? He sat down, opening a thick manila folder. Because I stayed quiet once. And my daughters paid the price. The folder was filled with hospital discharge papers, school attendance reports, printed emails, photographs of bruises and cuts, evidence of what his daughters, Anna and Maddie, had endured. She told the court I was unstable, he said, flipping through the documents. Said I had anger issues. Paid her friend to testify I hit the girls once. Just once. It never happened. But I do have a past. What kind of past? I asked quietly. I got into a fight when I was 22. Some guy spat on my girlfriend. I punched him. Got charged with misdemeanor assault. That was all it took. A single charge, a distorted story, and a courtroom ready to believe the worst version of a man they already distrusted. You're not unstable, I said. No. But it doesn't matter what's true if no one listens. A knock interrupted us, soft, cautious. Ron peeked out the curtain, then opened the door. It was Maddie, holding a walkie-talkie in both hands. Anna heard Mom's ringtone. She whispered. She called twice, then stopped. Ron took the walkie. Back to your room, he said. Lock the door. You know what to do. She nodded and ran back upstairs. Ron looked at me. She might come tonight. Your ex? She's shown up before. Screaming. Once she tried to take the girls by force. What if she brings the cops? We've got files now. Photos. Documentation. They won't be able to ignore it this time. He handed me another folder and said, keep writing. Add everything. Gary's behavior, what your mom said, when it started, how often it happened. I wrote for an hour straight. My hand cramped, but I didn't stop. We scanned each page. Uploaded backups to 2 different encrypted drives. But something kept gnawing at me. If the court didn't believe you about your daughters, I asked, why would anyone believe me now? Ron stared at the screen for a long time. Because this time, he said, you're not just a scared kid telling a story. You've got timestamps. You've got injuries. And I'll make damn sure they hear you. I wanted to believe him. But I couldn't forget the way the officers at the station had smiled like I was confused. How Mom looked at me like I was the enemy. I wanted justice. I wanted freedom. But more than anything, I wanted someone to choose me, for once. Not their partner. Not their image. Me. I just didn't know yet what it would cost. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Ron appeared in the hallway instantly, his silhouette framed by the yellow porch light leaking through the blinds. "It's her," he said, voice low. "And she's not alone." I joined him at the window. 2 cars were idling at the curb. My mother's silver sedan and a dark SUV I didn't recognize. A man stepped out first, dressed business casual, but his stance screamed authority. No police uniform, but definitely someone official. My mom followed, clutching her bag like it held the last scraps of control she had left. "She brought a private investigator," Ron muttered. "Or DCS. What do we do?" I whispered. "We stay calm. Don't open the door unless I say so." The knock came moments later. Sharp, deliberate. "Ron Ellis," the man called. "I'm Ted Jackson, licensed investigator contracted by Child Protective Services." Ron opened the inner door, but kept the screen latched. "Credentials?" Ted held up a laminated badge. "We received 2 separate concerns tonight. One from your ex-wife regarding your daughters, and another from a Mr. Gary Blake about a minor being harbored here under false pretenses." Ron didn't flinch. "She's not being harbored. She came here on her own, afraid for her safety." The man peered inside. His eyes landed on me. "She ran away from her legal guardian," he said. "If there's an abuse claim, we'll need a statement." I stepped forward. "He didn't just scare me," I said. "He touched me. For years." Ted blinked, then turned to Ron. "Do you have documentation?" Ron handed over a manila folder, photographs of my injuries, notes from our records, and court-documented evidence of his own daughter's abuse. My mom stepped forward, cutting between them. "She's confused. She's always had a vivid imagination." "She has physical bruises, Mrs. Blake," Ted replied calmly. "That doesn't come from imagination. Gary coaches Little League," she snapped. "Everyone in town respects him." "I couldn't help it," I laughed. "You think that's proof he's not a predator?" "She doesn't know what she's saying," Mom insisted, her voice shaking now. "She's going through something. She's going through the consequences of years of silence," Ron said. "And she's not alone anymore." Ted flipped through the folder, slower now. He looked up. "I need to make a few calls. Do not leave this house tonight." They turned and walked back toward the cars. Mom didn't even glance back. That night, I stayed in the living room. Ron offered his guest room, but I didn't want to be far from Anna and Maddie upstairs. I needed to hear them breathing. I needed to know this wasn't another nightmare that would dissolve by morning. Around 3 a.m., I woke with a start. There was a noise, a soft sliding sound. The laundry room window. I sat up, heart hammering. A footstep creaked on the hardwood floor. Then a voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. "Hey there, sweetheart." Gary. He stood in the hallway, half in shadow, wearing the same hoodie he always used for yard work. He stepped forward. "You made a mess. But we can fix this. You come back with me now, and we forget tonight ever happened." My throat closed. I reached for the walkie on the couch and pressed the button. "Ron, downstairs. Now." I stood, backing away slowly. Gary's eyes narrowed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You think he's going to protect you?" Ron's voice boomed from behind him. "She doesn't think. She knows." Gary turned, too slow. Ron was holding a bat. "You entered my home through a window," he said. "You do not touch that girl. You do not speak to her. You do not look at her. You hit me. I'll sue you for everything you've got," Gary sneered. "You broke in. I'll have you arrested." The standoff felt like hours. But then Gary stepped back, just once. Then again, and walked out the front door. Ron locked it behind him, then called the police. This time they came. This time, they didn't ask if I was lying. They arrested Gary outside in his truck, drunk and combative. They charged him with unlawful entry, attempted intimidation of a minor, and violating a child protection investigation. Mom showed up at the station. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stood beside Gary like a statue, refusing to make a statement. Back at Ron's house, the quiet finally felt safe. Like silence without threat. Ron made me tea and sat beside me on the floor. "You did everything right," he said. I was terrified. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps us alive. Courage is what you did anyway." And for the first time in years, I believed it. I still didn't know how the system would treat us. But I knew this much. That night, my silence ended. And someone finally listened. 2 months later, I sat in a courtroom that smelled like paper, bleach, and nerves. My palms sweated through my skirt, but I kept them folded, eyes forward. My mother sat 3 rows ahead, her back rigid. She hadn't turned around once. Gary sat next to his lawyer, wearing a navy suit and a smug half-smile like this was just another business meeting. A few seats down, Ron sat with his hands resting on his knees, shoulders still and squared. His calm steadied me more than I'd admit. The prosecutor called my name. My stomach flipped, but I stood and walked to the stand. Swore an oath, took a deep breath, and told them everything. I started from the beginning. The first time Gary entered my room, the camera pointed at my window, the late-night safety checks, the bruises he said I imagined. I told them about the garage, the day Ron appeared, the day I ran barefoot across wet grass like my soul was catching fire. The courtroom was silent. Then it was Gary's lawyer's turn. He tried to poke holes. Did you ever lie before? Were you coached? Why did you wait to speak out? But for every question, we had proof. Photographs, dates, cloud backups, the notebook I'd written in, every entry signed and timestamped. The security footage of Gary entering Ron's home at 3:12 a.m. through a locked window. That last one was the bombshell. The whole room gasped. You could see Gary's face change in the clip. He froze when he spotted Ron with the bat. He backed away, fled. Proof of premeditated trespassing, with a minor present. There was no talking his way out of that. And then, something I never expected. My mother stood. She whispered to her attorney, then walked up to the bench. Your Honor, she said, barely audible. I want to amend my statement. The judge nodded cautiously. Proceed. She turned to the jury, and then to me. I knew something was wrong, she said. I told myself it was just her imagination. I told myself Gary couldn't, but I was wrong. Her voice cracked. I let it happen, and I protected him anyway, because I was afraid of losing stability, of how it would look. I chose shame over my daughter. I didn't cry. I watched, because that wasn't redemption. That was regret, and regret doesn't rebuild a childhood. When the session recessed, Ron squeezed my shoulder. You did it, he whispered. They believe you now. An hour later, the judge read the ruling. Gary was to be immediately remanded and charged with multiple counts: child endangerment, unlawful entry, and sexual misconduct with a minor. My mother was referred for a formal negligence inquiry. Her custody rights were suspended indefinitely, pending psychological evaluation and supervised visitation. And I, just shy of 17, was granted emergency legal guardianship under Ron Ellis until emancipation proceedings could begin. I moved in with Ron officially 2 weeks later. It wasn't a fairy tale. Anna still checked under her bed before sleeping. Maddie needed the hall light on. I flinched when I heard footsteps behind me on stairs. But we built something. Pancakes on Saturdays. Movie nights with popcorn fights. A dog named Juno who never left my side unless I told her it's okay. On my 17th birthday, Ron gave me a small envelope. Inside was a folded document. Name change request form, he said. Only if you want to. I stared at it, hands trembling. You don't have to forget where you came from, he said. Just decide where you're going. Later that night, I wrote back to my mother. One letter. No return address. It said, I remember everything, and I won't let you forget it. But I'm not yours anymore. I'm mine.